All aboard the hype train! Yeah, we got ourselves a big ol' hyped up headphone today. The hypiest headphone I have seen for quite some time. Maybe even a bit more hype over this thing than the old Sivgas. These are the Thieaudio? Thieaudio Ghosts. That's a cool name. Everyone's talking about these dang things. Maybe for good reason. We'll find out. But here we go. Here they are. They are an open back dynamic driver headphone. They have a nice kind of Sennheiser-esque shape to them with a nice little grill on there. There's your logo right there. Oh, come on. There we go. Thieaudio. Thieaudio, whatever. Well, I just dropped all of my pads. That's fine. So yeah, the Ghosts. Man, oh man, lots of hype over these silly things. And let's take a look, starting with the build. Lots of good materials here. This is built very, very well. This is a $130 headphone. I'm going to say that now because it's going to become very important down the road. $130. And the build's exquisite. This is all the face of the cup here, where that nice grill is. That's metal. So we got a metal cup with a nice metal bronze accented ring around it. Then you have this portion of the chassis is plastic, but it's a nice, robust plastic. Feels very high quality. Going up into the yoke system, it's also metal. Very, very firm, the metal. It might just be straight up steel. Your headphone height adjustment right here, it is plastic. And rather than your typical clicking system, this uses a sliding mechanism. So it just kind of slides smoothly up and down. Very nice. I do wish that there were some markings on here to kind of help me identify where I want like certain positions, but it's fine. It does a pretty good job. It's not very noisy. You can probably barely hear that, but it works. It's nice. Going up into the headband is wrapped into this very, very, very soft protein leather. This protein leather headband is extremely soft, ridiculously soft. In fact, it's very reminiscent to the headband found on very reminiscent of the Sivga headband. It has kind of that same very, very super soft feel. What else? The pads. The pads are probably fairly similar looking. The pads are a velour, very, very reminiscent of Sennheiser pads. They look very, very close. I do not believe that they are Sennheiser pads. That would be kind of weird, but they're very close to it. Decently nice. They're a little firm. They're not super plush. They're not super cushiony, but they're nice. They're decently soft, and the velour is soft. It's a good pad. Your connectors are just a simple 3.5 millimeter jack, dual entry. So, I mean, extremely easy to find and replace with whatever cable you want, as long as it is a dual entry. That's very, very nice. And it is labeled on the side of the cable for your L and R for your left and right drivers. So thank you for that. And when you do plug it into the headphone itself, you can still see those printed indicators. So I appreciate that because there's not really... The only other place on the headphone that indicates if it's the left or the right side is right here on the adjustment bracket. You got your R right there for your right driver, left on the other one. The other end of the cable also ends with a 3.5 millimeter jack. And then the cable itself, it comes with one cable. And the cable that it comes with is interesting. It's a weird kind of cable. While the cable is weird, it kind of makes sense. And I'll explain why, but let's take a look at it first. Here is the cable. You notice how it's kind of flat. It's got portions of it that are, it's just kind of it's a flat cable. See there? There you go. A flat 4-wire cable, and it goes 4-wire all the way down to the end termination. And then where it has this splitter that divides it into 2 different wires for your individual drivers. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool cable. I haven't seen many cables like this. And where I have seen cables like this would be in the IEM market, the in-ear monitor market. And that would make sense because Thieaudio is known for their IEMs, their in-ear monitors. This is, I don't think this is Thieaudio's first over-ear headphone, but it's probably going to be their most popular one for sure because the hype train is real. The cable's very nice. It's not super long. It's maybe a little bit over 4 feet, which is perfect for me. It might look just the slightest bit janky to you on the camera right now, but I'm pretty confident I could get this very, very straight. I think this would be a great cable, but you kind of fuss with it a little bit. It also came with this decent, nice hard shell case. It's a decent case. It's nothing fancy about it. It just has a little tiny bit of branding on the little tab there and on the tab on the zipper. It's a little bit of a butt case, kind of fat down the middle, narrow at the top, with a simple just nylon hand strap there. You open it up, and big surprise, it's just this. There's not really any molding or anything in here. The headphone just kind of sits in there and it just does its job. It's totally fine. It's totally usable, totally doable, nothing fancy. It's just a purpose-built thing, a purpose-built little case here. It does fine. The inside is kind of a somewhat velour-esque feel to it, but it's fine. It's nice. You got a little bag here to put your cable. It's great. It's a nice little box. It's not a gigantic headphone case, which is nice because most headphone cases are huge. This is decent. This is a nice little size. It's still a little bit bulky, but you know what? I'll take it. It's fine. Comfort. They're pretty damn comfortable. Pretty damn comfortable. They're pretty light. They got about the same weight as something like your HD6XX or your HD600s. I mean, they even got kind of a similar build to them, but with better materials, actual steel parts, actual metal parts. And yet it's not that much heavier. It's pretty nice. The headband, the wrapping on the headband is extremely soft. So it is form-fitting to my head with ease. I don't really feel any top head discomfort at all. It's distributing it decently well. And again, it's so freaking soft and plush. It's great. I barely have any discomfort at the top of my head at all. So the comfort for the top is great. Clamp force. You would expect this to have some clamp force, probably pretty similar to the Sennheisers because the build is so similar, and you'd be close. There is definitely clamp force. That is what is keeping the headphone on your head, but it's not as bad out of the box as a lot of Sennheiser headphones tend to be. It's not as rough and super ridiculously clampy. Clamp force is nice. And the pads, while they're not the most plush pads on earth, they're soft enough that it's not a big deal. I have worn these for hours without any discomfort. And it's not, even though it is a very similar shape to something like the 600s, the HD600s, it is not really hitting the same sort of pressure points on my head as the Sennheisers generally do. So I'm not getting a lot of pressure like right there in my jawline. There's plenty of space and ear volume here within these pads, so I can get my ear in there with pretty good ease. It's a fine fit. It's totally doable, totally fine, totally comfortable, and it's solid. It's a solid fit. It's going to stay there no matter what. I suppose if you think the clamp force is too much for you, you might be able to bend the headband a little bit. In fact, feeling it now, I feel a little confident that you could probably bend the headband a little bit if you really needed to, but I don't think you do, even though it is, noticeably pretty clampy. They do allow for a little bit of tilting, just the slightest bit, but that's enough for it to at least sit flat amongst most head shapes. So for me, it definitely sits flat. Let's see here. In terms of our cloud comfort scale, our scale of comfort, how many clouds of comfort do these headphones get? They do a really good job. They are more comfortable right out of the box than a lot of the Sennheisers are. So they're already going to beat those out. We're looking at something above 6 for sure. The pads, if they were softer, since I have these out here, if they were something more like these Sivga pads, which are just the most insanely soft and ridiculously plush pads on freaking earth. I mean, look at that. Ugh. If they had pads like this, they'd probably be one of the most comfortable headphones I own. But the velour is fine. You could pad swap pretty easily. They'll accept pretty much anything, and I have done pad swaps. We will talk about that later. But with these stock pads, I give them a good solid seven clouds of comfort, maybe even 7.5. I think if you kind of wear them in a little bit more, as you would expect from something similar to a Sennheiser headphone, wear them in a little bit, wear in those pads, the velour a little bit, they'll be even a little bit more comfortable. But out of the box, 7 clouds of comfort. Very good. Very good comfort. Good. Now we get to ignore all of that and focus on the sound on these things, because that's where the hype is. The hype is all about the sound. What the hell's going on with these things? Because they are getting compared and talked about against headphones that are extremely out of its price range. This is a $130 headphone, as I mentioned, and people are saying that this sounds as good, potentially even better, than headphones that are $800 to $900. That's a huge thing to say. Let's talk about this frickin' sound. I'll start out by saying that these do sound pretty exquisite. They have a very, very good sound signature. They are a joy to listen to. Breaking it down, the bass range is extremely well controlled. It is not bloated and boomy and getting into places it shouldn't be. It's very accurate and it stays in its ranges. It is not the most extending bass. It can hit pretty low, but it could also hit a little bit lower. So it's not the most extension, but it's a real good middle point between not enough extension and unnecessary amounts of extension. So the bass range is really, really nice. It's very clean. It's very accurate. It's almost kind of neutral sounding, but there is definitely a little bit of warmth in there. It's got a nice punch, a nice kick, but it's, again, not rumbling and bleeding. The mid-range is where it shines the most. Mid-range is where it shines the most for sure, particularly with vocals. Vocals in this headphone are fantastic, absolutely amazing. They're ridiculously clear and have just the most velvety, pure, beautiful timbre to them. I can't express enough how wonderful vocals sound in this thing. You might be getting just the slightest little bit of warmth in the vocals, just the slightest amount, but overall, the vocals are incredible in this. Listening to male or female vocals, they sound real, they sound intimate, they sound just so natural and vibrant and silky smooth. It's such a wonderful headphone for lyrics. Oh my goodness. And the rest of the mid-range kind of follows suit. It's just such a clear, forward mid-range. Wow, the mid-range on this is extremely good. Extremely good. The treble range is also pretty nice. It's not elevated, it's not overly sparkly or trying to reach certain extensions that it's not capable of. It is not the most extensive treble range, but it certainly hits high enough. And it never, ever gets unbearable. It's never fatiguing. It's never sibilant. Not at all. The treble range is very, very nice. Maybe just a slight bit rolled off. But lovely, lovely amounts of timbre and plenty of detail. Really good detail, actually. Treble detail on this is pretty freaking impressive, once again. It is open back, so you do get some soundstage. It's not a whole lot. It's a good medium soundstage. It's here-ish, but it's plenty. And the imaging is fantastic. The separation and the instrument separation, the imaging is all around you, 360 degrees, above you, below you, behind you, whatever. I hear, we want to talk gaming, I hear gunfire flying over my shoulders and planes and shit flying around me. It sounds great, and it's very easy to pinpoint where they're coming from. And likewise with music, instrument separation is very, very precise. I'm able to be pretty confident of exactly where all the instruments are. So imaging's fantastic, good soundstage. So it's a very immersive, very well presenting headphone. So, okay, great. It's a good headphone, right? That's great. But the big question, does it replace stuff like your Sennheiser HD6XXs? Or does it replace or compete with something like the Meze 109 Pros? I think that's the really big one. That's the one that's gotten the most people's attention. Zeos Pantera, you're the one that started that. This hype train's because of you, buddy. But yeah, the big question, how do they compare with the Meze 109s? Unfortunately, I can't tell you because I don't own Meze 109 Pros. I can't make that direct comparison. And I'll admit that I bought these probably because Zeos did say they sound like 109s. I really want 109s, and sure, maybe one day I will get them down the road, but they're just not my budget right now. But $130 for Meze 109 sound was extremely enticing, so I fell down that rabbit hole. Do they sound like 109s? I don't know, but I can tell you what they do sound like. The headphone that they do sound like that is a Meze headphone are these. The Meze 99s. So there is a definite similarity in the sound signature, but I want to be clear, it's not exactly the same. The Meze 99s are a higher resolution headphone compared to the Ghosts. And the Meze 99s have much more bass extension than the Ghosts. What is almost identical, though, is that mid-range performance, especially that vocal performance. Vocal performance in the Ghosts was almost identical to the 99s. But, again, the 99s have a deeper hitting bass and a more present bass range. So if the Meze 99s were too warm for you, this might be the way to go. Because what we kind of have here, and I hesitate to say stuff like this, but we kind of have a Meze 99 and an open back Meze 99. I know that that's kind of something that people were saying the Meze 109s were going to be, an open back 99. I'd say this matches that description better. Again, I haven't heard the 109s, but these sound like this. They have almost the same sound signature, but because it's open, the bass range is allowed to escape and breathe, so it doesn't hit as hard, and it's not as warm overall as the 99s. It kind of lets it breathe. It kind of lets it get around and be a lot more natural. They don't have quite the same resolution, especially the bass performance detail and resolution than Meze 99s. But other than that, the sound signature is very, very close. So that's still a really big deal in my eyes, because Meze 99s, if you're going to get, a Meze 99 Classic, for example, that's a $300 headphone. This is less than half that price. And it sounds very, very close. Very close. Not as warm, not as punchy, not as much sub bass, but otherwise very close. I tried also comparing it to something like our Sivgas here, expecting it to have a similar sound to this in terms of like the price to performance. But the Sivgas cannot compete with the Ghosts in terms of resolution and timbre and just a natural, more realistic sound. Sivgas can't compare to these, which is very interesting because the Sivgas are a little bit more expensive than the Ghosts. So yeah, the Ghosts are a really amazing headphone. Maybe, they might be one of the best, if not the best, open back headphone for under $150 right now. I can't think off the top of my head of a headphone I have that's under $150 that would be able to do what these can do. Ooh, yeah, it's a big one. I also kind of thought maybe they could compete a little bit with the Philips Fidelio X2s, but the Philips Fidelio X2s they don't try to reach the same sort of sound. They're kind of more over there on the very, very ridiculously relaxed and booming side of things. This is a bit more neutral and a bit more honest, a bit more natural, and just has a huge amount of resolution for a $130 headphone. These are absolutely fantastic headphones, and they are deserving of the hype. They should be a headphone that you should be checking out and you should be exploring for sure. But I don't think that they are, one, a replacement for something like the 6XXs. They're still not. They're just not. And do they sound like the 109s? The Meze 109 Pros? I doubt it. But something that was mentioned, that, again, going back to Zeos, who made this comparison, he did take the Meze 109 Pro pads and did a pad swap to these, which, as far as I understand, the Meze 109s have a micro suede type of pad. So I did do some pad swapping with this, some pad mods, and I got interesting results, but not ones that I think make sense. Now, I do not own Meze 109 Pros, as I have explained, so I don't have those pads here to compare with. And unfortunately, as of the recording of this, you cannot purchase the Meze 109 pads individually by themselves. I do know that Meze is working on that. They're going to start selling the pads individually. But currently, right now, today, they don't have it as an option. So I can't make that comparison either. However, what I did do is I went off and I got these. And these are the Brainwave oval micro suede pads. They're a little bit, Alcantara kind of feeling. And I figured, maybe these are pretty close. Maybe these are a close comparison to the Meze 109s. They're very soft. They're very plush. They have a really nice returning memory foam. And they do have that microfiber suede sort of feel. So I did try these on the Ghosts. And that didn't yield very good results. I'll tell you now. Doing a Brainwave oval micro suede pad on the Ghosts makes them ridiculously bass heavy. Way too freaking much. An absolute ridiculous amount of bass. It is overwhelming and it drowns out everything else. Not the pad swap you want to do, for sure. So that was interesting. I was expecting it to maybe give me some sort of idea what the Meze 109s might sound like, but if that's what the Meze 109s sound like, I really don't know why people love them so much. So I think that there's just something else going on. So that's not a good match. And I tried other pads too. The pads that I ended up liking the most, oddly enough, and I certainly don't really recommend this, but I have these huge, humongous Meze cowhide pads. Look at these things. They're huge, gigantic, and angled. And they're soft, but they're soft in the same soft kind of way that an old couch is. That's what these are. They're like freaking having a couch on your head. Look at that. And what these did is basically give me almost the same sound as the default pads on these velour pads, but because it pushes the drivers a little bit further away, it gave me some more soundstage. So, and also made the treble just a little bit brighter, giving you just kind of a little bit more sparkle and a little bit more detail in the treble. So these were okay pairing, but it's kind of silly. I don't think that they really need a pad swap. I think that the sound that they have stock is incredible and amazing. And I think that they're a good enough headphone at an amazing price that they are deserving of this hype train that they're on, but that the hype train should just be on its own merits. That it doesn't need to be comparing itself to $800 Mezes or something as universally loved and beloved and trusted as the HD6XXs. They're just amazing headphones in of themselves, and they are an incredible price performance for sure. The detail and resolution and timbre and vocals is, I can't express enough, amazing and an absolute joy. But they don't need to try to be something else. They're just awesome. The Ghosts are awesome, and that's it. That's all they really need to be. They're just the Ghosts. I really, really dig it, but that's just one nerd's opinion. In any case, there's that. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're on board the hype train like me, I hope that you end up enjoying your Ghosts, because I really, really like them. I really do. In any case, thanks for stopping in. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you very, very soon.